Welcome to College Chats. Today I have Mr. Evan Heidel. Evan, super happy that you're joining me today. Would you like to give us a
Yeah,
little background of who you are, why you're here, and what you do?
yeah. So my name is Evan, and I'm currently a junior accounting major here at San Diego State. In terms of things that I do, I'm currently the president-elect of Beta Alpha Psi, which is not a fraternity, and it's actually the honors accounting club here at San Diego State. And I'm on the show because Beck wanted to get an accounting major on. It's gonna call you out for that. I don't know.
Hey man, I'm trying to get all majors on this platform so that any student that hops on, they could literally keyword search, I'm trying to do accounting or Deloitte or anything relating to accounting. And they would have a scalable resource up there and have students and touch points and actual connections that, they can easily reach. And so that's kind of the reason why I got you on. Plus, I knew you had an interesting backstory with starting with a different major and then moving into accounting because that's kind of untraditional. So maybe you should talk a little bit about that. What was the little origin story, the hero's journey for you going into accounting?
Yeah, so believe it or not, I actually started out as an environmental science major, which I don't think you knew that. I started out in environmental science, and then I decided I didn't want to do that, and I was going to do finance instead. And then I was doing finance, and I took an accounting class, and I just found accounting more just intuitive and kind of up my alley. And also, I thought that accounting would be easier to get an internship in. I think the finance path, like finding internships, was kind of hard. Like it's a little bit it's not as polished. There's not as clear of a path for getting internships in finance as there is in accounting. So I was kind of struggling a little bit, and I saw a lot of my friends having the big four accounting firms all come to their meetings and network with them. And I was kind of well, that's something I would want to do. And so I switched to accounting, and then I have loved it ever since, and was able to secure an internship in accounting.
Okay, that's good. Congrats on the internship. I want to get an understanding of starting as, a freshman coming in that may or may not want to do accounting and they're considering accounting. What is the typical professional development path that an accounting major would take? And
Oh,
let's say they want to get into the top accounting firms, which they recruit from SDSU, right?
correct. Every
Yes.
single accounting firm will recruit from San Diego State for accounting roles.
Mm-hmm. What's the typical professional journey for a freshman kind of
That's a
trying
great
to,
question.
yeah.
A lot of people come in as not as accounting majors. It's very common to come in as a business or a finance major because the accounting space is a little more niche. There's not as many accounting students, and it's a little more specialized. And on top of that, the requirements are actually the exact same for the pre-major for
Mm-hmm.
business, finance, and accounting. So it's a lot more common to see people kind of do what I did and switch in their second or third year, or come in as community college transfers in accounting. In terms of professional development, a lot of that honestly comes from the student orgs. That's where I see a lot of people sort of transition from more student into more being able to recruit for internships.
So you did mention because you touched on student orgs. Now I kind of want to understand what you did with, your involvement because you were in FIS at first. What was the original thinking behind going into FIS? What did you want out of it? What did you not gain because you left afterwards? And I remember. And then what was the intention of going into Beta Alpha Psi, right?
Yeah, so I joined IS originally for a couple of reasons. I mean, one is I wanted to find a little bit more of a community and start to really network with people and sort of gain friends, quite frankly, in the finance space, as well as to develop my own professionalism and gain some leadership experience. And I think I got most of those things from FIS. I mean, obviously, it was an organization that at the time was a little bit disorganized because we were sort of building it back out of COVID years.
Yep.
But the main reason why I transitioned to Beta Alpha Psi was that simply that I went to accounting and was
Yep.
more accounting focused. And Beta Alpha Psi, was a little bit more developed and a little bit, they didn't really struggle as much during the COVID years. And so they were sort of just more in line with my interests and better able to give me the opportunities that I wanted. And I was able to give back as well through, being in the org and becoming a leader in the org.
Mm-hmm. And now, how did you specifically what is your role now? How are you giving back now to Beta Alpha Psi, and how is the organization itself structured?
Yeah, so in terms of how I'm giving back, a lot of Beta Alpha Psi is centered around recruiting. So it's about helping people who are accounting students get accounting internships, basically. And as someone who's been through the internship process or been through the recruiting process, me and a lot of other people in the club have valuable insights that we can give back to people. And we do that through, resume reviews where we'll look at your resume and we'll tell you, how to fix it. Because, a lot of people don't know how to write or don't know how to make a resume. And, so you see people who think, oh, we have this great resume. And then we look at it and it's like, it's not very good. And that's not to say these people aren't smart. It's just that they've never really been coached or given that feedback. And so a lot of it is about just giving feedback and using the expertise that we have to help people who have not yet gone through that recruiting process.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, FIS, we tried to do something similar where we try to structure the organization around fully converting the members into like full-fledged professionals in the finance world. But it looks like BAP was already ahead of the curve there. And then you did mention during COVID that it didn't really struggle as much. Was it because the fact that BAP also has like different chapters? Is that the case for BAP?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely is part of it. I think that because SBSU like is kind of a quote unquote target school for accounting, there's just a better process in place for these orgs, because like every accounting firm, like we know every accounting firm is going to show up, and so it just is a lot easier to sort of structure things and to sort of keep things going, if that makes sense.
And now talking about kind of converting your involvement in organizations into actual experience, what was that like? What are some steps you took? Because I know you did case competition, you got your internship. What can you describe that process and anything in between?
So with you mean like want me to describe my recruiting process?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, so when I first started, basically what happened is there was a case competition that I found out about through my accounting class, and I decided to participate in it, and it was a lot of fun, and again some valuable insights. And I reached out to so we had like Deloitte was putting it on, and we had a buddy or like a kind of like a manager who worked at Deloitte. And so I basically networked with him and started talking with him, and he gave me a lot of really good advice, and sort of using his connections and his support that he gave me, and plus going to Meet the Firms event, which is the annual or semi-annual accounting event.
Yeah,
I was
I
able
remember.
yeah, and so that's huge. It's a really good event, and I was able to sort of leverage that into an internship offer, which is kind of interesting because like I was not involved in any accounting clubs when I was recruiting. So it's just kind of interesting that I didn't choose to do that, which in hindsight, it probably would have been a lot easier for me if I had.
Yeah. I mean, for maybe other people in those kind of organizations, clubs relating to accounting, like what is sort of the conversion rate, right? If you had to sort of like, I don't even know if there's even a way to like guess the number, but what's the conversion like for when you put on these large scale events like Meet the Firms? Because when I looked at it, I think there was like a whole flyer and stuff ready, and it was also like paid admission. It was like this big event, and even people that I knew in like general business or even finance majors were also trying to go to the event. I think when
Yeah.
I saw it being held like last year.
So I can't really speak to the conversion rates for Beta Alpha Psi, we have a GPA requirement, which likely makes our conversion rate a little bit higher than some of the other orgs, because you may have students that don't meet the GPA requirements. But our conversion rate was about 80%. So 4 out of 5 people placed in internships. Obviously, there's different spectrums of how competitive those internships are. Some might be big four, some might be local CPA shops, which either of those is fine, but some of those are just more competitive. But for the most part, people who want internships and are in Beta Alpha Psi are able to get internships.
Trying to call what I was going to ask you relating to the internships. I lost my train of thought. Okay. So I kind of want to ask about the conference you went to,
Sure.
Deloitte, because isn't that what also resulted in you getting an internship later on? Or am I mistaken?
No. Yeah, so what happened is basically after getting the internship offer, I signed it pretty much right away because I knew I wanted to go to Deloitte. But essentially, when technically speaking, I didn't have to have signed it yet. They sent me and the rest of the class that had gotten offers to the Deloitte campus, and essentially it's a place where you have a lot of fun, and they sort of
Mhm.
kind of make you seem like they're great and they really care about you, which they do to an extent, obviously, but there's some fluff in it. But if you kind of look past the fluff, it's still a really fun experience. You're on this giant like Texas ranch, and you're in like a 5-star hotel that they own. You basically just like eat really good food, and like they have like a Texas barbecue place that's open till like 2 a.m. Like you hang out, you eat good food, and it's a really fun experience. Like there's a Starbucks that's free. You can just get drinks from Starbucks. Like it's kind of silly, but
Three
it's a lot of
drinks a
fun.
day. Wow, that must be fun. And I
Yeah,
remember my
it's
other
fun.
question. I remember my other question that I forgot. It had to do because you mentioned the GPA requirement. Why do you guys do that, and how do you guys come up with that specific number requirement?
Yeah, so our GPA requirement is set by the national chapter for Beta Alpha Psi. So
Interesting.
we don't have anything to do with it. I mean, technically speaking, we can make it higher than the national chapter, but there is a floor that the national chapter sets for us that we have to abide by. And I think the reasoning
Mhm.
is just to sort of make BAP a little more prestigious, make it a little bit more kind of pre-select people so that firms are able to know that the people that are in BAP at least meet the GPA requirement and are generally going to be stronger students
Mhm.
in general.
Now, out of curiosity, I tend to agree with that approach, but there might be instances where there might be students that maybe they didn't start off strong at school, and then their grade point average would be a little bit lower than the minimum requirement. Are there ways to like navigate around that barrier and still be able to get into the organization, or maybe they don't need to get into the organization? Are there still ways for them to be below, let's say, the average accounting firm requirement for GPA? Can they still recruit into those firms?
For Beta Alpha Psi, it's going to be just in
Mhm.
general, it's a pretty hard set GPA. You might be able to make like case by case,
Mhm.
basis. Like if you're really close and you make a lot of connections with people in Beta Alpha Psi, like maybe, but like in general, it's a pretty hard rule. In terms of accounting firms, they're a little more lenient. I mean, your GPA has to be pretty close. Usually, accounting firms want around a 3.3, but it's a little bit lower than that. You can make up for it by networking and sort of being approachable, because at the end of the day, accounting firms are looking for people that they can teach. There's
Mhm.
not a ton of technical skills that you need to know. Like you're never going to have an accounting interview where they're quizzing you on your Excel skills. It's mostly about, are you teachable? And so if you come off as very teachable and very likable, and so your GPA is like a 3.1, I think they'd probably take you over someone with like a 3.4 or a 3.5 who comes off really poorly in the interview or doesn't have a lot of other relevant experiences. So it's definitely not a deal breaker to be somewhat close, maybe not quite at that 3.3. You just probably want to make up for it in another way. And usually that's networking or just coming off well in the interview, which is, again, it's not something that's super hard to do because there's no
Mhm.
technical stuff. And in general, behavioral questions are going to be more general and not super specific. So it's definitely something that is it's not necessarily going to be a barrier. Now, if your GPA is like a 2.5 or something where it's not even kind of close to what they want, then you might need to look more at local firms or mid-tier firms. But I don't necessarily think that even that is a barrier to later on, getting the job, whether you want to go big four. If you want to go big four, I don't think that's necessarily going to be a barrier later on in your career. But of course, not everyone wants to even go big four, so it just kind of depends on what you want to do.
Mhm. And now to touch on like preparation for these different roles, internships, whatever it may be in this accounting journey, no matter the actual role specifications. What do you think about the current like what school teaches us for majors and like the actual curriculum itself? And how do you think that stacks against what you might be doing in internships, full-time roles? Do you think that there's still like a barrier you need to like jump over, you need to self-learn? Is there extra preparation that you need to do via maybe, because I know for finance you would need to do some sort of like Wall Street prep, CFI, some other like modeling thing. Does accounting have a similar effect here?
So what's great about accounting is the answer to that is no. You don't need to do any extra stuff. They will teach you everything.
Interesting.
I mean, yeah. The only thing I would say is that if you want to get into more of like an accounting tech role, like if you
Yeah.
wanted to go do like some kind of IT audit or a little bit more AIS type role, it may be good to sort of get some relevant experience or some certs for that. But if you're strictly speaking about like audit or tax or some other form of just kind of accounting, no. That is sort of the nice part about accounting.
Mhm. Okay. And now I kind of want to touch on, let's see, I still am not sure what are the different ways or journeys that an accounting major can go to? How many different roles can they go to? Because you're saying like an assurance or audit, right? Is that one role? Is that two roles? What other roles are there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
I'm
yeah, no, you're good.
clueless.
I can explain. So basically, for some reason, there's like a stigmatization around the word audit. So there's been a lot of kind of like silly rebranding where it's not audit, it's assurance, right? Or it's not, it's not IT audit, it's risk advisory. Like just
Okay.
silly stuff where they're kind of trying changing the names of things. It's silly, but essentially audit and assurance are the exact same thing. Yeah, they're the same thing. Your primary paths are going to be tax and audit, with audit being the more dominant one, and then to a lesser extent also IT audit.
And in auditing, the main goal is to check if all of the three statements and such align with the actual transactions that a company does, right? Is that what
Yeah,
audit
so
is?
so so when you go into auditing, at least kind of public accounting, right? So we're not talking about internal auditing,
Yep.
more in the public accounting space. What you're doing is you're ensuring that the financial statements that they're going to put forth in their 10Ks and in their financial statements materially are free of error. Meaning, if the company said they made $5 billion, then they should roughly be making $5 billion. Obviously, it doesn't have to be exact, right? But the idea is that they roughly materially, there's not any material differences in what they're reporting versus what actually happened.
Okay, that's
So
helpful.
yeah, and that just kind of, the idea behind that is to increase investor confidence. So to make it so that, if I'm investing in a company, I can actually look at these financial statements and know that, they're not lying, basically.
Yeah, no wonder like these big four get so much business. It's like every single SEC filing of a 10Q or 10K requires accounting firms like Deloitte and such to essentially to work with the client, right? Are they
Yeah,
involved with those like filings of those documents?
yeah. So any public company that's going to be publishing financial statements has to have them audited by a public accounting company.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, and then as far as your like professional kind of journey into this space, like what are your goals, right, that you're trying to do for, let's say, until you graduate, and then what do you see yourself doing in the next 3 to 5 years after you graduate?
That's a great question. So I'm not entirely sure yet. I mean, I have a tax internship. I think if if it comes out the way that I want, I might be able to maybe potentially recruit for an advisory role. Or I think long term, I want to get an MBA somewhere, and sort of pivot potentially into more of a consulting space. But that's obviously more long term.
Consulting.
And then the exact path towards getting there, I'm not completely sure on yet. But for now, I have a tax internship that I'm happy with, and looking forward to doing that. And that is sort of my primary goals. And then obviously being president of Beta Alpha Psi will take up a lot of my time in the coming year. So that's another goal is just to help the club grow.
Yeah, that's cool that you're like giving back in terms of like the club and trying to serve as president. And you want to do that next semester, right?
Yeah, so I'll be president next semester.
Nice. And I'll definitely put like your LinkedIn contact and such. So if anybody is interested in joining, if they find a video, if they're interested in joining BAP, then they would have to go through your super strict GPA requirements that you would essentially get in. But all right, dude, I had a question about what you would tell basically any student right now as best practice to be able to get roles and internships in this space. What are kind of your go-to practices?
So I think one of the biggest is just going to be apply early. And, you might be thinking how early. The applications that they're interviewing for right now are for summer of 2024. So like literally 18 months away.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a posting. I don't know if you can apply for it, but I saw a posting on Deloitte's website for like 2026, which is like ridiculous. Like, why
Dude,
is that even on there?
one time I tried to apply for the IB-ish division of Deloitte or whatever they had,
Yeah, yeah,
and then I applied, and I think I told you this. They like sent me the letter of rejection 2 years later. I'm
yeah.
like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I mean,
No, but
applying
just
early, I guess it's super similar to finance now, huh? Even in accounting, it's like the recruitment cycles are getting faster as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just important because you don't want to miss out, right? Like I think people think like, oh, summer's coming up in 5 months, let me go recruit. Like, no, you should have been recruiting a year ago, or could have been. I mean, technically speaking, you can recruit in the fall for roles that come up in the summer, but like, why not recruit now? I mean, at the end of the day, worst comes to worst, you just learned more about recruiting and can re-recruit in the fall. But
Hmm.
best case scenario, you have a job and you don't have to stress. I mean, I remember fall semester, like I had teachers that are like, I'm gonna make homework really light this whole month so you can just recruit. And I'm sitting there like I already did recruiting, like, and so like
Wow.
why not just get to that space?
What do you think about the idea that like some students might not be knowledgeable of that fast recruitment cycle start, right? So if they don't
Yes.
hear, if they're not in BAP or like other clubs, they don't know that, oh, by the way, best practice is to recruit like -5 months ago,
Yeah.
They're not gonna
I mean, and that is literally one of the things that we're trying to solve right now in Beta Alpha Psi is
yeah.
that like there's like no public awareness, right? Like people don't know. Like people come in junior year and the teachers say you can recruit, and that's when they start really getting into it. When in reality they could have been recruiting way longer ago. I mean, technically speaking, there are sophomore internships for these accounting firms that you could probably,
Hmm.
I think you can recruit for them your freshman year. So people are literally not recruiting for 2 years when they could be. And that's something
Yeah.
that we want to solve, right? Because and ultimately, like if you decide that you don't want to recruit till junior year, because whatever, totally get it. But
Hmm.
people need to have access to that information to make that decision for themselves. We just don't see right now like, people understanding or even having any knowledge that they could be recruiting. And that's something that we're working to solve right now because
Hmm.
it should be that, every year, the accounting organizations and the school has people that are recruiting at all different, levels of college.
Yeah, what are your thoughts? I wanna kind of hear your thoughts on like what you would think of doing as a potential solution to like solve this like sort of information gap early on, right? Some people might not even know of the opportunity, and if they did know, that probability is high they would want to do this internship freshman sophomore year. So like, what are some like kind of goals you could try, or like not goals, but like solutions, makeshift solutions you could try? I don't know if you're already implementing that through BAP, but
So that's kind of what a lot of our conversations at BAP are about. We're looking at trying to potentially, do more classroom presentations for in sophomore classrooms. We're looking at trying to potentially reach out to people at community colleges. We're looking at a whole bunch of different ways to try and just increase our sophomore and freshman recruiting. Um, and hopefully we'll have more specific actionable steps, in the coming weeks, because that's kind of what we want to implement in the fall once we're going forward to create, stronger recruiting bases for people who can recruit but just don't know they can. But it's also hard sometimes because similar to me, a lot of them we're not, accounting majors their freshman, sophomore years. So there's some difficulties in targeting those groups of people.
mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. And then as far as like you did mention like general guidance was to start like looking for recruiting early, but as far as like maybe skills or anything that can help students like develop themselves as a professional, what would you recommend? Because like me personally, freshman sophomore year, I wasn't very good at reaching out to people, nor was I good at communicating on like, hey, I want an internship and I have sort of these traits to qualify me as a great candidate for this internship. Like I didn't know how to say that well. So do you think that there's like different skills, soft skills, technical skills that students should work on to be best suited for recruitment?
Yeah, sure. So first off, no technical skills. You don't need technical skills. They're not going to quiz
Hmm.
you on anything technical. Really, it's soft skills. And so, I mean, there are some skills that you need in terms of like knowing how to write a resume. That I mean, you just gotta one. You have two options. You can either join an org and learn through the org, or two, you can learn on your own. Joining an org is by far easier. Then it just comes down to your experience. I mean, that first interview you have, you might just completely bomb it. There's really no there might not be a way around that. I mean, you can do like mock interviews, and again, it just comes back to experience, right? I mean, you do a bunch of mock interviews through an org or through someone, you're gonna probably do better on your actual interview. You learn how to prepare using the STAR method, you're gonna do better on your actual interview. And
Mm.
you do one interview, maybe it goes okay. You do 5 interviews, fifth one goes great. And so it's really just an experience thing, and that's kind of my advice is just to get as much experience as possible with those soft skills, right? Put yourself out there, run for, leadership in student orgs, right? When, different firms host open houses, right? Well, they'll let you come to their fancy brand new offices, go to those, talk to professionals, right? Kind of put yourself outside of your comfort zone. Because ultimately, like, that first conversation you have with a professional might not be very good, but that, that 40th, that 50th, that 10th is going to be a lot better. And so, there's no magic to it. It's really just an experience thing. The more experience you have, the better you'll be at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's like a great way to kind of close this episode here. Do you have any last parting advice to potential students interested in accounting, interested in that sort of route, audit assurance,
Yeah.
anything along those routes, Beta Alpha Psi? Do you guys have any like large scale
sure.
event coming up?
So our large scale event passed, so it was the Meet the Terms event that we just had last month, but we'll have one again in the fall. I think my parting advice would just be to not let your current lack of knowledge or preparation stop you from just kind of getting your feet wet. I mean, like we all kind of start somewhere, right? I mean, I'll share that, when I first wrote a resume, keep in mind, this resume got me like a 97 in the STSU writing class. My first resume was 2 pages. It was awful.
Yes.
And so, like, I think I've shown you it. Like, the point is that everyone kind of starts somewhere. And so, like, don't let that stop you from starting to develop. It doesn't mean that you're not smart or that everyone else is like magically ahead of you, because no one is. And so just like start and you'll get experience as you go. And there's lots of supportive people that want to see you succeed and have already been through the process or farther along, is what my last parting advice would be to accounting students.
Boom. That's it, everybody. Thanks so much, Evan, for hopping on, for your tips, tricks, advice, and for enlightening us on Beta Alpha Psi, the kind of mission you guys are on. Everything was super cool. And then I'll definitely put your link for LinkedIn in case any student wants to reach out down in the description. So with that being said, peace out. I don't know. I don't have a closing.
Dude, peace out. What the hell?